They say the worst betrayals come dressed in holiday lights and wrapped in family tradition. I learned that truth on Christmas night, watching my 8-year-old son pick up pieces of his shattered heart from a marble floor while his own grandmother turned away. My name is Sophia Hayes, and this is the story of how I stopped being invisible. The Thornwood mansion glittered like a jewel box that December evening, every surface reflecting the warm glow of 1,000 Christmas lights. But warmth was something that house had never truly possessed, at least not for me and my son Ethan. We were the shadows in the corner of every family portrait, the names mentioned last at gatherings, if at all. I had spent 31 years trying to earn my place in that family. 31 years of swallowing criticism, of making myself smaller, of watching my mother Eleanor's eyes slide past me to land adoringly on my older sister Victoria. 31 years of my father Richard's dismissive grunts when I spoke about my work managing a bookstore, while he boasted endlessly about Victoria's charity galas and Marcus's law career, even though Marcus barely did anything but exist comfortably on family money. But it was Ethan who bore the deepest scars. My beautiful, sensitive boy with his thoughtful eyes and gentle heart. He had committed the unforgivable sin of being born to a single mother, of not having the perfect nuclear family that the Thornwoods could display like a trophy. His cousins, Victoria's children, Isabella and Leo, were showered with attention and gifts, while Ethan stood by, trying so hard to be good enough, smart enough, quiet enough to finally be seen. That Christmas, he had been so excited. For weeks, he had worked in secret on a project, his small fingers careful and precise. He had found the shattered remains of my grandmother's cardinal music box in the attic, a family heirloom that Eleanor had thrown away years ago because it was old and didn't match her aesthetic. My grandmother had given it to me before she died, telling me that cardinals appear when angels are near, that they're messengers of love from heaven. Ethan had spent hours researching how to restore it, using his allowance to buy special glue and paint, staying up past his bedtime to make it perfect. When he finally revealed it that night, holding it up with trembling hands and explaining what it meant, his face glowed with hope. He wanted so badly to contribute something meaningful, to show he belonged in this family of accomplished people. The cardinal music box, perched delicately in his small palms, represented everything he had poured into being worthy of their love. Eleanor was in the middle of her performance, the one she gave every year where she played the magnanimous matriarch. She was gushing over Isabella's painting, a mess of colors that any 10-year-old could produce, but that Eleanor proclaimed was pure genius. Her arms swept wide in an exaggerated gesture of admiration, and whether by accident or by the casual cruelty that had become second nature to her, her hand connected with the music box. Time seemed to slow as I watched it arc through the air. The sound of it shattering against the marble floor was obscenely loud, cutting through the Christmas music like a scream. Shards of painted porcelain scattered across the floor, the tiny cardinal figurine broken into pieces, the delicate mechanism that played the lullaby my grandmother used to sing to me twisted and destroyed. But it was not the sound of breaking porcelain that broke me. It was the silence that followed. No one apologized. No one gasped or moved to help. Instead, every eye in that room turned immediately to Isabella, who had begun to whimper at the sudden noise. Eleanor swooped down to gather her into her arms, cooing reassurances, praising the painting again as if to distract from the incident. Victoria joined her, both women creating a protective circle around Isabella, while completely ignoring my son, who had dropped to his knees and was trying with shaking hands to gather the pieces. I watched a single tear trace its way down Ethan's cheek. Just one. He did not wail or throw a tantrum. He simply knelt there, this small boy who had worked so hard, who had hoped so much, collecting the fragments of something that could never be made whole again. And in that tear, I saw every moment of his young life that he had been overlooked, every time he had tried to be enough, every wound that family had inflicted with their indifference. Then Victoria laughed. It was a light, dismissive sound that carried across the room. Oh my goodness, it was just some old broken thing anyway. Why make such a fuss? Isabella's painting is so much more impressive. Isabella's... Something inside me that had been bending for 31 years finally snapped. I stood up slowly, and perhaps it was the quality of my movement, the sudden stillness that radiated from me. But the room began to quiet. I looked at each of them in turn. Eleanor, still clutching Isabella. Richard, examining his phone with studied disinterest. Victoria, smirking at me with that familiar expression of superiority. Marcus, avoiding eye contact as he always did when things got uncomfortable. Eleanor. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, cold and clear as winter ice. Richard, Victoria, Marcus. They looked at me then, and I saw the first flicker of surprise cross their faces. I never spoke like this. I never demanded their attention. You have destroyed something tonight, I continued, my voice cutting through the space between us like a blade. And it was not just a music box. It was not just some old broken thing. It was hours of my son's love, his hope, his desperate attempt to matter to you, and not one of you cared. Eleanor drew herself up, her face arranging itself into an expression of wounded dignity. "Sophia, how dare you speak that way in my home? This is completely inappropriate." "Your home?" I felt something like a smile touch my lips, though it held no warmth. "This is a house where my child is treated as invisible, where his efforts are dismissed, his feelings ignored, his very existence tolerated at best, and I will not subject him to one more moment of it." I reached down and took Ethan's hand, helping him to his feet. He clutched the pieces he had gathered to his chest, his eyes wide. Richard finally looked up from his phone, his expression darkening. "Sophia, stop this dramatic nonsense. You're embarrassing yourself and this family. Sit down and stop making a scene over nothing." The word nothing echoed in my head. Nothing. That is what my son's heartbreak was to them. Nothing. That is what we had always been. Embarrassing? I met my father's eyes directly, something I had rarely done in my life. "The only embarrassing thing here is the truth you have all been hiding behind your perfect family facade. The truth that you chose cruelty over kindness, appearances over substance, favoritism over fairness." Victoria stood up, her face flushed with anger. "Do not play the victim, Sophia. Everyone knows you have been the disappointment of this family since you got pregnant by some nobody and refused to give the baby up like Mother suggested. You made your choices." Something cold settled in my chest, a clarity I had never felt before. "You are absolutely right, Victoria. I did make my choices. I chose to love my son. I chose to work hard and build a life for us, and now I am choosing to make you all a promise." I bent down and gently took the broken pieces from Ethan's hands, wrapping them carefully in my scarf. Then I straightened, meeting each of their gazes one final time. "You have taken so much from us over the years: dignity, peace, the simple expectation of family love. But the one thing you cannot take is our future, because we are walking away from you now. And I promise you this: one day, you will understand exactly what you lost tonight. You will see what an extraordinary person my son becomes, and you will realize that you forfeited the privilege of being part of it. That knowledge will be my revenge. You will live with the loss of us, while we live freely without you." Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her chest in theatrical shock. "Sophia, come back here this instant. You cannot just leave." But I was already moving toward the door, Ethan's hand firmly in mine. I did not look back at the glittering mansion, at the perfect Christmas tree, at the family who had never been mine. I walked out into the December night with my son, and the sound of the door closing behind us felt like the first act of freedom I had ever claimed. In the car, Ethan finally spoke. "Mom, are we really never going back?" I looked at him in the rearview mirror, this brave, beautiful child who deserved so much more than he had been given. "No, baby, we are never going back. We are going forward to something better." That night, after I had tucked Ethan into bed in our small but warm apartment, my phone erupted with messages, angry texts from Victoria calling me selfish and dramatic, a cold email from Richard threatening to remove me from his will, as if I had ever expected or wanted anything from him, a long, rambling voicemail from Eleanor about family loyalty and how hurt she was by my rudeness. I deleted them all without responding. Then my phone rang with a call I actually wanted to take. James Sullivan, the district manager who had been encouraging me to apply for the regional management training program, had texted earlier asking how my Christmas was going. When I told him what had happened, he did not hesitate. "Pack a bag for you and Ethan," he said. "Come spend the rest of the holiday with my family. No pressure, no expectations, just people who would love to meet you both." I accepted, and that decision changed everything. James's family welcomed us like we had always belonged. His mother hugged Ethan and asked him about his interests. His father taught him card tricks. His sister's children included him in their games without question. I watched my son laugh freely for the first time in months, and something that had been clenched tight in my chest finally began to unfold. Later that night, after Ethan had fallen asleep on James's mother's couch, worn out from playing, James and I sat together in the quiet kitchen. "Thank you," I said, and he shook his head. "You do not need to thank me for basic human decency, Sophia. What your family did tonight was unconscionable." I looked down at my hands, at the ring-shaped indentation on my finger, where I had worn my grandmother's ring, until Eleanor had pressured me to give it to Victoria years ago because she deserved something nice for her wedding. "I spent so long trying to be good enough for them," I whispered. "I thought if I was just patient enough, kind enough, undemanding enough, they would finally see me, see us." James reached over and gently lifted my chin until I met his eyes. "Sophia, the problem was never you. Some people are incapable of seeing value in anything that doesn't serve their ego. But that does not diminish your worth. It reveals their poverty." Those words settled into me like seeds in fertile soil. Over the next few weeks, they took root and began to grow into something I had never allowed myself before: self-worth that did not depend on my family's approval. I returned to work in January with a new determination. I had been managing my bookstore for years, doing excellent work but never pushing for more because some part of me believed my family's assessment that I was not ambitious enough, not impressive enough. But now, freed from the weight of their judgment, I allowed myself to want more. I applied for the regional management program. I spent my evenings after Ethan went to bed studying business strategy and leadership. I networked with other managers, sharing ideas and learning from their experiences. And when the program director called to tell me I had been accepted as one of only 5 candidates selected from over 100 applicants, I let myself feel proud. The work was intense. I attended training sessions on weekends, took online courses at night, and pushed myself harder than I ever had, but it was different this time. I was not working to prove myself worthy to people who would never acknowledge my worth. I was working because I finally believed I deserved success, deserved a life bigger than the small box my family had tried to keep me in. By March, I had been promoted to regional director, overseeing 15 stores across 3 states. My salary more than doubled. But more importantly, I had found something I had been missing my entire life: confidence. My relationship with James deepened naturally during this time. He never pushed, never demanded, but he was always there, supporting, believing in me, treating Ethan with genuine affection and respect. When Ethan forgot himself one evening and called James Dad, I waited for the awkward correction, but James just smiled and pulled him into a hug, saying, "I would be honored if you wanted to call me that." Ethan's birthday was in April, and I decided to do something I had never done before: celebrate him lavishly, publicly, and without any consideration for the Thornwood family's reaction. I rented out a wing of the science museum he loved, hired his favorite magician to perform, and invited everyone who had ever been kind to him: his classmates, his teachers, the librarian who helped him with his projects, James's family, my coworkers, our neighbors. And I sent a formal invitation to the Thornwood family, knowing with absolute certainty they would not come. They never came to Ethan's celebrations. They were always too busy, had other commitments, could not make the drive into the city where we lived. The party was magical. Ethan glowed with happiness, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about him. He gave a small thank you speech that made everyone tear up, talking about how this was the best birthday of his life because he was with people who saw him. I took dozens of photos and carefully curated the best ones into an album. Then I posted them to social media with a caption I had thought about for days: celebrating the most extraordinary 8-year-old I know. Grateful for everyone who chooses to be part of Ethan's life and to witness the incredible person he is becoming. Family is not just about blood. The best family is the one we choose. I tagged every member of the Thornwood family. My phone exploded within minutes. Angry calls that I sent to voicemail, furious texts that I read and did not answer, a particularly venomous message from Victoria accusing me of deliberately trying to hurt the family, a cold, threatening email from Richard about cutting me off entirely, removing me from all family documents and gatherings as if that was a punishment rather than a relief. I responded to only one message: Richard's. "You cut Ethan out of your heart years ago, Dad. There is nothing left for you to take. But thank you for making it official." Then I blocked them all except Marcus, who had sent a single message: "He looks happy. I am sorry." Over the next few months, I began to quietly research my family's public lives, something I had never bothered with before because I had been too close, too enmeshed. What I discovered was enlightening. Richard's business dealings, which he always portrayed as beyond reproach, had some interesting gray areas. Contracts awarded to friends, financial reports that seemed overly optimistic, relationships with politicians that blurred ethical lines. I did not do anything with this information immediately. I simply noted it, filed it away, and watched. Victoria's charity work, which she documented exhaustively on social media, was mostly performance. She showed up for photo opportunities but rarely did actual work. The fundraising events she claimed to organize were actually done by hired staff, though she took all the credit. Her perfect Instagram life was a carefully curated fiction that bore little resemblance to reality. I mentioned these observations in casual conversations with people in their social circles. Not accusations, just thoughtful questions. "Oh, I heard about that project Richard's company got. Was not there some concern about the bidding process?" Or, "Victoria posted about that charity gala. Did it raise as much as she claimed? I heard some donors had questions." Seeds of doubt, scattered carefully, began to sprout. Then came the turning point I had been unconsciously working toward. Victoria was hosting her annual spring charity gala, a massive event that was more about displaying wealth and status than actually helping anyone. It was the social event of the season for a certain set, and this year it was especially important to her because she was positioning herself for a board position with a major children's charity. I bought 2 tickets at the premium level and did not tell anyone I was coming. When James, Ethan, and I walked into that ballroom, dressed in our finest, the reaction was immediate. Heads turned. Whispers started, and the expression on Victoria's face when she saw me was worth every penny I had spent on my dress. We did not approach them immediately. We mingled, made polite conversation, let people see us. I introduced James as my partner, let slip that I was now a regional director, mentioned casually that Ethan had just won a science competition. I was pleasant, charming, completely at ease. When I finally approached Richard, I did not reference our estrangement. Instead, I asked him a very specific question about a construction project his company was bidding on, mentioning a particular clause in the contract that had raised concerns with the zoning board. His face went white. "How do you know about that?" I smiled pleasantly. "I read, Daddy. I pay attention. It is amazing what you can learn when you are not too busy trying to earn approval you will never receive." I moved away before he could respond, leaving him shaken. With Victoria, I was even more surgical. I complimented her dress, admired the event, and then said, voice dripping with concern, "I was so sorry to hear that the scholarship fund from last year's gala did not materialize. I had several friends who were expecting those payments for their children. What happened?" Victoria's smile froze. "I do not know what you mean." "Oh, maybe I am confused. It was definitely your event, though. The one where you raised $200,000? But the foundation said they only received $50,000. I am sure there is a reasonable explanation." I walked away, leaving her fumbling for words while the people around her began to look at her with new skepticism. Eleanor tried to corner me near the end of the evening. "What do you think you are doing?" she hissed, her elegant facade cracking. I looked at her, this woman who had given birth to me but had never truly been a mother, and felt nothing but pity. "I am not doing anything, Eleanor. I am simply existing in the same world you do, and apparently that is threatening to you. Maybe you should ask yourself why. You are trying to destroy this family." "No," I said quietly. "This family destroyed itself a long time ago when it chose image over integrity, favoritism over fairness, and pride over love. I am just refusing to keep the secret anymore." I left her standing there and returned to James and Ethan, who were laughing together near the dessert table. That was my family now. People who chose to love us, who saw our worth, who made us feel safe. The consequences of that evening rippled out over the following months. Richard's questionable business practices came under increased scrutiny. A major deal fell through. His reputation, built carefully over decades, began to crack. Within a year, he would be forced into early retirement, his legacy tarnished. Victoria lost her bid for the charity board position. Old friends began to distance themselves as questions about her fundraising continued to surface. Her marriage, already strained, collapsed under the pressure, ending in a messy divorce that left her diminished and bitter. Eleanor retreated into herself, unable to maintain her social position without Richard's status and Victoria's glamorous life to bolster her own image. Only Marcus reached out sincerely, sending a long letter apologizing for his years of complicit silence, asking if there might be a path forward. I told him the truth. Ethan and I are not interested in being collected when it becomes convenient or when the alternative is loneliness. If you want to be in our lives, you have to earn it through consistent, genuine effort, not words, actions. He accepted that and began slowly, carefully, showing up, sending Ethan birthday cards with real messages inside, calling to check in without wanting anything. It was tentative and would take years to rebuild, but it was real in a way our family had never been. Meanwhile, my life blossomed in ways I had never imagined possible. James proposed to both Ethan and me on a summer evening in the botanical gardens. He got down on one knee, presented me with a ring, and then turned to Ethan and offered him a necklace with a cardinal pendant, made from the pieces of the broken music box that we had saved, now beautifully repaired and incorporated into a new design. "Ethan," James said, his voice thick with emotion, "I want to ask your permission to become your dad, officially and forever. Will you let me?" Ethan, my beautiful boy, threw his arms around James's neck and sobbed yes into his shoulder. And I cried too, watching these two people I loved most in the world choosing each other. We married in September in a small ceremony in my grandmother's favorite garden, surrounded by the family we had built, James's warm, welcoming relatives, my co-workers who had become friends, Ethan's teachers, and the neighbors who had watched out for us over the years. Marcus came and sat quietly in the back, respectful of the boundary I had set. I posted one photo from the wedding. Just one. It showed the three of us, James in his suit, me in my simple dress, Ethan standing between us in his role as ring-bearer, all of us glowing with genuine happiness. The caption was simple. "Today I married my best friend and my son gained the father he always deserved. We are complete." I did not tag the Thornwood family, but I knew they would see it. Social media has a way of making sure these things reach the people they are meant for. Marcus texted me that evening. Mother cried when she saw the photo. Father left the room. Victoria deleted her social media. They know what they lost now. I did not respond immediately. I was too busy dancing with my husband and my son, too busy being happy. Later, much later, I wrote back, "Their loss has always been their own doing. Ethan is not a prize they can claim when it suits them. If they ever become people capable of real love rather than performance, we can talk. Until then, we have all the family we need. 3 years passed. Ethan thrived in ways I had hardly dared dream possible. James legally adopted him, and Ethan chose to take James's last name as his middle name, Ethan Sullivan Hayes. He grew into a confident, kind teenager who knew his worth because he had been loved unconditionally. On his 14th birthday, he gave me a gift that made me cry. It was a music box, a Cardinal music box, but not a replica of the old one. This was something new, beautifully crafted, and inside it, under glass, were the pieces of my grandmother's original music box, arranged in a mosaic pattern that created a new kind of beauty from the brokenness. "I kept all the pieces, Mom," he told me, his voice deeper now but still achingly sweet. I knew someday I would figure out how to make something good from what was broken. I held him close, this child who had taught me more about strength and resilience than I had ever taught him. "You already did, baby. You already did." That Christmas, 3 years after we walked out of the Thornwood mansion, our own home was filled with light and laughter. James's family came, bringing noise and joy and the easy affection of people who genuinely loved each other. My coworkers stopped by with cookies and wine. Ethan's friends filled the living room with teenage energy. The Cardinal music box, the new one, hung on our tree in a place of honor, catching the light from 100 bulbs. I heard from Marcus that Eleanor and Richard's marriage had become a cold, quiet thing, 2 people existing in the same space but no longer truly together. Victoria had moved to another city, trying to rebuild a life away from the ruins of her reputation. They rarely spoke to each other anymore, the family fracturing under the weight of its own dysfunction. I felt a pang of something when I heard this. Not quite pity, not quite satisfaction, just a recognition that they had built their own prison and now lived in it. But mostly, I felt free. That evening, as I watched Ethan laugh with James while they attempted to build an absurdly complicated gingerbread house, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From that terrible Christmas night when my son's hope shattered on a marble floor, to this moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. Revenge, I had learned, was not about making someone suffer. It was not about cruelty or vindictiveness or lowering myself to their level. Real revenge, lasting revenge, was building a life so full of love and happiness that their absence from it was its own punishment. The Thornwoods had lost the privilege of watching Ethan grow into an extraordinary young man. They had forfeited the right to be part of our successes, our triumphs, our daily moments of grace. And they would live the rest of their lives knowing they had traded something precious for something hollow. That was not my doing. That was their choice, made over and over again through years of prioritizing image over substance, favoritism over fairness, pride over love. My choice, the one I made that Christmas night and every day since, was different. I chose to walk away from people who could not love me properly. I chose to find and build a family based not on obligation but on genuine care. I chose to teach my son that his worth was inherent, not dependent on others' approval. I chose to believe I deserved better, and then I made better happen. As the evening wore on and our guests began to leave, James pulled me close. "Happy?" he asked, pressing a kiss to my temple. I looked around our home, at the evidence of our beautiful, chosen family, at Ethan contentedly reading on the couch with hot chocolate, at the life we had built from the ashes of what I had left behind. "More than I ever thought possible," I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. The Cardinal music box on the tree caught the light, and I remembered my grandmother's words. Cardinals appear when angels are near. They are messengers of love. Perhaps that was true. Or perhaps cardinals simply represented resilience, the ability to be vibrant and alive even in the coldest season, to sing even when the world is harsh, to survive and even thrive when others thought you would fade away. Either way, I had become the cardinal, and my song was one of freedom, of choosing love, of refusing to let anyone else define my worth. The Thornwoods had thought my silence was submission, my patience was weakness, my love was obligation. They had not understood that I was simply waiting, gathering strength, learning my own value. And when I finally spread my wings and flew, I left them with nothing but the echo of what they could have had. If only they had known how to love without conditions, how to see without prejudice, how to give without expecting performance in return. That was their loss, not mine. And I carried that truth like a shield and a blessing, a reminder that the bravest thing we can ever do is walk away from those who cannot love us well, to find those who can and will. Ethan looked up from his book and smiled at me, that smile that held the universe. And I smiled back, surrounded by love, anchored by choice, free at last from the weight of unwinnable approval. This was revenge. This was triumph. This was home.